Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. When we're discussing mounts, obviously we're talking about some sort of wood. There's been some discussions about if you think you've got a problem with a piece of wood. Well, both of these plants are not doing well, and both of them are on exactly the same type of wood. Now I don't know whether I've got other plants on wherever this bark came from. I can't even remember, it's too long ago. But one of these is Brassavola nodosa, which is this one. And I must admit, most of the really good versions of this plant I've seen are actually in pots rather than mounted. But all the older roots are going over, and some of the new roots that were produced last year are not growing. They've stopped. Now at the moment this plant is just starting a new growth in there. There's another one there. There's two new growths on this, and looking at where that new root's coming out, there's going to be a third. And there are some new roots starting. So that's going out in the kitchen, coming off of that mount and going in a holy clay pot, because it's not happy on that piece of wood. And it hasn't been happy on it for some time now. Now you have to bear in mind I dropped this plant. Those two stumps sticking out to the right of the shot were lovely shiny new strong growths last year till I dropped it flat on the floor and broken both off. And it's never recovered properly. And I sort of blamed losing its new growths on, you know, the place where the new roots would have come out and this, that and the other. And I think in this case it's the flipping wood. So if something doesn't work, change it. Now this is a Brassavola hybrid, and this is David Sanders. Now this thing has never grown well and has never bloomed. And the three new growths there, one of which has got scale on it, I'll deal with that as part of the problem. But that's not the problem with the plant, that's only going to be a problem with the leaves. It's not on the base of the plant. But this is another one, I've just watered it. It's got some new roots coming out now, and a lot of those roots are coming out from older roots where they're branching out. And I can see, if you look at that pair of new roots there, one's in the air, one's touched the wood. Which is the one with the nice green shoot, and which one's lost its nice green shoot? So you're coming off of there as well and going in a... Well, I'll either find another piece of wood, or I might try that in a holy clay pot as well. It's not going to lend itself to going in a pot very well, is it? It's going to look like that in the pot, because that's the base of the plant. But it's not staying on there. Those roots are not happy. As soon as they touch that wood, they keel over. So there's two examples of the sort of things to look out for if you've got mounted orchids, is roots that should be growing and extending and branching and attaching, and they're just not. Yeah. Now there could be other reasons. I mean, certainly in the case of this one, that could have something serious in the plant. But as a precaution last year, anything that remotely looked like it might have had the dreaded F went through a treatment program. Yeah. So in theory, it stopped it inside the plant. And new growths and new roots should be healthy. So there could be an ulterior reason why these roots aren't doing too well. But I'm going to give them both a chance. Stick them in holy clay pots. I've got a few spare ones lying around. We'll see if they perk up, having been removed from that wood. Because if that wood's putting out toxins and it's knocking the root tips over, obviously the plant's just not going to progress, is it? So we'll give those two a chance with something different. It just goes back to the old thing. If something's not working, try something different. Even if you can't identify what's not working, trying something different may just kickstart the plant. So those two are going out in the kitchen and going in pots. I'll tag this one on the end of the two Brassavolas simply because these three plants have always lived together. Those roots are happy on that wood. They're sticking to it like glue, and they're not losing their root tips. Now this thing, chances of me ever getting this to bloom are practically zero. This is the Rancholalia thing. I've forgotten now. Glauca. I'll get there in a minute. More coffee. But yeah, I mean, this is suddenly decided to come into active root growth. Older roots are branching and attaching. Yeah, new roots are coming out in the places where the new growths will form soon. See, on this plant, roots first, new growth second. Yeah, so they don't all produce their roots when the new growths come out. This one decides to get hold of something before it sticks out its new growths. Quite honestly, to me, that makes sense. If you're a plant hanging on a tree, before you make yourself heavier by a load of new growths, it might pay to make sure you're absolutely well attached. So that makes sense to me. Push your roots out first, get a good grip, and then push out some more weight. But anyway, the chances of me getting that to bloom are pretty slim because of the sheer high light levels it wants. The plant rotted, and I took a piece off the end. That's what that stump is. That was the only piece that didn't have any signs of rot. And it's been sat there for a while, not doing much, and now it's at it. But roots are happy on that. Now that's cork bark. And quite honestly, you shouldn't really have trouble if you use cork bark, if you can get it, because it's virtually indestructible. I mean, it can't go soggy because it doesn't hold water. So even though you can get the surface wet, you can't give it a good soak because that's why it floats. It doesn't hold water. Yeah, lightweight. And that's quite a thin piece for its size. It's a nice piece, that. I like that. Nice and gnarly, plenty of places for roots to get a grip, and that's just exactly what they're doing. So I've got no problems with that staying on its mount and getting on with some new growth shortly. That's just the way that one grows. But yeah, massive root activity at the moment. Looks good. I'm just going to tag this little chat on the end of this video. As I was putting that one back, the alarm bells went off. I spotted a scale, singular, 1, which is almost impossible. How can there be one adult scale? And I touched it and it fell off, so it was dead. But it triggered some thoughts that I've been having. When I was talking about pesticides, fungicides, specifically pesticides, and the fact that I thought the Bravado wasn't working as well as it used to for various reasons, like not as strong or whatever, quite a few people mentioned that you can build up a resistance to pesticides. Now, yes, I agree, and yes, I understand. But if the stuff had done its job properly and wiped the pests out, there wouldn't be any live ones to build up a resistance, would there? And any new ones would be new ones coming in from somewhere else that had not necessarily been subjected to that pesticide. So although I agree a lot of pesticides have been taken off of the market because resistance has been gained, I bet it hasn't been gained in Roger's grow room. I bet it's been gained out on the flipping farmlands and places like that, where it's been misused, possibly. But anyway, it's just a thought. I love adding thoughts into, what is logic. So if in this grow room the Bravado had done its job, there wouldn't be any live ones left to build up a resistance. Therefore, I wouldn't have resistant strains of the same bugs, because they'd all be dead. Food for thought. There's a slight annoyance in my tone there. It wasn't meant to be. It's just, can you see what I'm getting at? If the flipping stuff did its job properly, there couldn't be resistant strains in here, because they would be dead. Well, it makes sense to me. I'm going to get fired at left, right and centre now. Anyway, just food for thought. Mull it over. See what you think. I'll see you next time. I'm just going to tag this on the end because I've virtually finished what I need to do out here, so I won't be starting any new videos. If I tag enough things on the end, it'll be an hour long, won't it? But anyway, this is Dendrobium chryseum, and it's one that came out of the big box, and this is why the box was big, to get this flipping thing in. It's a monster. But I filmed it in situ when I was doing the update on the big box plants, which may not have shown what I was getting at. Now, I keep saying it's going to bloom, but let's just have a look. Have a good look at what these things look like. Their colouring, their patterning, And now, because I've got some light, have a look at the new growths. And to me they look identical, so maybe those are going to be kikis, not blooms. But now you can see what I was getting at as to just how many new growths there are at the base of this plant. That's a lot of new growths, and that's going to produce, they are going to produce one hell of a root system shortly. Yeah, they're coming out from all over the place. You can't see them all because some are up in there, like coming out down the back of the plant. But yeah, must be up, heading towards a dozen new growths on this thing. It's going to double its size, isn't it? Flipping monster. Yeah, so I'm a little dubious as to whether these are actually going to be blooms or whether they are going to turn into kikis. But we will wait and see. I haven't had it long enough to know what the spikes would look like, but what I do know is they are like mini, oh that's going over now, but as an example, they are like smaller versions of that. So they are pendulous rhizomes with multiple blooms on. So they're not like sort of anosmums with just 1, 2 or 3 blooms per spike. They do form a sort of pendulous rhizome or whatever the word is. I'm not trying to do big words with this amount of coffee. But yeah, that's what I was trying to get at, was that was difficult to film in situ. It's just the sheer number of new growths on there. And without the light, they don't show up because they're so dark. Until they form their leaves, they've got this beautiful patterning on them. Lovely tiny little purple dots all over a deep green. Really attractive new growths. But eventually, obviously, they'll, you know, the green leaves will start coming out the top. And hopefully, with any luck, those are going to get heavy and dangle down, because if those go upwards and grow to the same size as these that are hanging downwards, I don't know where I'm going to put it. So let's hope these come out and come over and dangle down with the rest of them. But again, as I said, I haven't had it long enough to know its growth patterns or anything, but at least it's growing, and it's growing well. Very few new roots on this at all, but it had an adequate root system to keep it going. And that root system will now be replaced once those new growths get going. They should fire up roots all over the place. So there we go then.